Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Show with your host, Jeff Lopes.
We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on a good friend of ours, Arron Golub. Arron, what's up, brother? How are you?
Good, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me. Excited for today.
Very, very cool. I was actually on Arron's podcast about a week ago, so when this airs will be a couple weeks apart. Great story, man. One of the most inspiring stories we've heard in a while, and just a great young entrepreneur trying to get his footprint in the industry, in the world, and get his story out to the masses. So I'm excited to be able to offer a platform to tell Arron's story and hopefully grow his story to the masses, because it's a story that needs to be heard and it's going to inspire a lot of people. So Arron, before we even get into your story, what do you currently do career-wise? And let's start from there. What are you currently doing career-wise for our audience to know you?
Yeah, so I do a couple things. I work in the world of finance, which I can't really talk about just because of compliance reasons. But in addition to that, I'm a motivational and keynote speaker. I run my own podcast called Blind Ambition, and I'm in the process of starting to write a book.
Yeah. Exciting things ahead of you. So with your podcast, when did you start your podcast?
In about July.
And where was your mindset when you first, the podcast industry, since the pandemic has taken off to a new level, right? Because a lot of individuals, they're home, they want to get their story out, they're using the podcast as platforms. When you first got into creating your own platform and creating your own podcast, where was your mindset and how did you actually get the whole process started for a lot of people trying to start?
Creating my own podcast had nothing to do with getting my story out more and spreading it to others. So what my mindset, my thoughts around it was the fact that I was going on a ton of people's podcasts. Being a speaker, especially, with the pandemic, I had to switch to doing a couple things. A, more virtual events, and B, get on as many podcasts as possible so more people heard my story. And so that's what I was doing. And, it came to the point where I was meeting some really cool, interesting people. And I said, this is a fantastic networking tool. Why don't I use a platform? It doesn't take a ton of time, doesn't take a ton of effort. Create my own podcast, come out with an episode a week, and just use it to network with others and share their stories. And that's really the whole purpose of it. I use it and I reach out to people who I want to connect with. And maybe if I didn't have a podcast, they wouldn't respond to me. And that was the idea behind it. And it allowed me to connect to you. It allowed me to connect to Chris Ross. So many people that it's gotten me into their network and built incredible friendships with because of that.
Yeah, I love that aspect. And it's something we actually discussed off the air a few times, is as an entrepreneur, the importance of networking, importance of surrounding yourself with individuals that are going to better you, but also help you. And I think that is a huge aspect. And we had discussed this prior to as well, is that's one of the main reasons I started my podcast, was to build a network and connect with individuals like yourself and the Chris's and the Mike Diamonds. There's so many people I've connected with in the last 9 months, 10 months. I've started this podcast like this. This is our second podcast recording of the day. This morning we had on John Lee, which is a massive entrepreneur as well. So it's being able to network with individuals and hear their stories. So let's get into your story. We have such an incredible story here, and I do want this podcast to be all about you. Tell them a little bit about yourself and your history, and then we're going to go into your actual past. But give them a little understanding of who you are and your story right now.
Yeah, so my name is Arron Golub. I'm legally blind and became the first legally blind Division I athlete to play in a game when I played football at Tulane University. Went on to become a team captain and then NFL free agent. And so, I was born legally blind, and for me, that means I have no vision at all in my right eye and very limited in my left. My left eye, there's probably a hole the size of about half of a dime, and then through that hole, my vision is about 2,200. So through that small hole, what a normal person would see at about 200 feet away, I would see it about 20 feet away. And I've lived with that my entire life and used it to my advantage.
So growing up, because you were born legally blind, as a child, this was a norm to you.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't something that happened to you, a sudden accident or something like that. This was the norm to you. So you learned as a young child to adapt to it, to grow with it, and it became your norm. When you initially, what age did you realize, I think this is an important question for our audience and to know your story. What age did you realize that you had a need that other people didn't have, and you're different in a way that you had to adapt and learn to? What the easier way to explain is ask this question is, what age did you actually start realizing that you're legally blind and you were different from other children? At what age? And why I'm asking is because obviously my son's story, and then we've talked about that. So what age did you actually start realizing it?
I don't think that I can remember a specific age. I mean, I think it's something where if you grow up with it, if you were born with it, you always know and you understand. I mean, as soon as you're not an infant or a toddler anymore, you realize that, okay, you need to look at things closer than other children. It takes you longer to figure out certain things, like learning how to tie your shoes or learning how, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I mean, so probably at a pretty early age, probably, when I started going to preschool or kindergarten or something like that.
Yeah. So one story you had brought to me, and we had talked about prior to going on air the other day, is at a very young age, you took fitness as a challenge, and you took fitness as something you adapted into your being and who you are.
Yeah.
What age did you start that at? And let's dive into that story part of it.
Yeah. So I started playing football going into 7th grade. And I was never very good. I was an offense and defensive lineman. And the point at the time was, at that level, it's really just learning, figuring out how to play the game. And so it was, hit the person in front of you in the other color jersey. And okay, I could do that. Yeah. And I really fell in love with, the game, lifting weights, getting better. I started lifting in probably 8th grade, I think it was, and, did whatever I could to get stronger, get better. But, it wasn't doing me a ton of good. Sophomore year of high school, I was a 3rd string offense and defensive lineman on junior varsity. And, my goal was to play Division I football.
Yeah.
And so, sophomore year of high school, if you're going to play Division I football at a top school, you're probably either starting on varsity or at least playing a lot on varsity. You're getting looks at by colleges at that point if you're going to play at the next level.
Yeah, of course.
And that wasn't me. And so something flipped in my head, and I just made a decision. I said, what can I do to play Division I football? And I found long snapping, and I only focused on that. I told my coach I didn't want to play offense and defensive line anymore. I only wanted to focus on long snapping. I would show up to school every morning around 5:30 in the morning and practice for, an hour and a half before school. I would go to school, go to practice, lift weights every single day after school. I did whatever I could to outwork everyone else, because that's what it took for me to be successful. And, eventually it paid off.
So where in your mind, like you said, that shift, like a lot of people, I think I always say pro athletes and the top tier pro athlete, it's not, when you put 10 athletes in a Division I school together, you'd be lucky if one of them becomes a superstar in a pro level. And it's that one that's able to shift their mind and understand how to get to the next level. And the work ethic, I think, is so important. And those are two things you actually dove into right now, Arron. Is when was that moment, and how did you come to realization that, hey, I have to outwork everybody to get that level, and I have to shift, which I think is very interesting, because you had a goal at a very young age, because a lot of individuals just want to play. And for you to understand, for me to get to that level, to be at a Division I school, I had to switch my position. I had to do. So what snapped in your head? Was there a conversation with somebody? Was there something you saw? Like, what shifted your mind at that moment?
I don't think it was one moment. I think it was between, not getting playing time in high school at first, going to different long snapping camps and not being very good at it in the beginning. And something just clicked, and I just said, I'm at a disadvantage. I need to work 10 times harder than everyone else if I want to be the best at what I do. And that's just what it took. I couldn't be the hardest working person in practice and, just go home and relax, because there's someone else who's lifting weights after somewhere else. There's someone else who's going to school in the morning and practicing. I had to do everything that no one else was doing when no one else was around in order to achieve my goals. And I didn't care if anyone else on my team was with me. I didn't care if anyone else in the state was with me. It didn't matter to me, because I had my vision on, this is what I want to accomplish. What do I have to do to get there?
That is awesome. So when you got your did you have interest from more than one college or university? Did you have interest, or
Mhm.
was it just the one you went to?
So I did outreach to literally every single Division I school in the country. At the end, I ended up having two offers, one from Tulane, one from University of Illinois.
Yeah.
And it really came down to, some advice that I got from a coach. And the advice was go to school where, God forbid, something happens and you can't play football, you'll be happy being a student. And that's how I picked Tulane. It was a better fit for me as a student. And so I knew that if something happened and I could no longer play, I'd be really happy there.
That is very, very good. Now, let's dive into that moment, their first actual game on a Division I level. What was your experience? What was your energy? How was that moment building up to that day?
I'm October of my sophomore year. And, it was exciting. It was an incredible experience. And, I think I knew for a few weeks that, my coach was giving me more attention, was thrilled with my performance, noticed my work ethic, and was ready to give me an opportunity at some point. And when the time came, I was very excited. And, I think one of the things was I wasn't very nervous, though. And most people are surprised by that. And, when I talk about that, I say, long snapping is the same thing as a golf swing. And when you do it 10,000 times, you can do it with your eyes shut. It's the same thing every single time. And so I had snapped the ball so many times that it was just robotic to me. And so I get out in the field, snap the ball, block. It's the same thing I did in practice the day before. And so, it was an amazing moment. My teammates were thrilled, but, I wasn't really focused on what had happened, the history I made or anything. I was focused on doing what I could to help my team. And, I think that honestly, at the time, my teammates were probably more excited. My coaches were more excited than I was. And I was excited to get an opportunity to contribute to the win, not excited because we just made history.
Yeah, I love that aspect. So when that actually happened, that moment happened, and there was obviously notoriety coming with it. There was some obviously publications and people wanted to talk about it. How did you handle that? Because that is, there's different levels of understanding, because when we got back to what you said, being in that moment, I think that there's a natural lesson to be learned here. Is if you put in the work and you put in the preparation, you are ready for that moment. It's when an opportunity comes, and I think you could talk about this in the business world, you could talk about this in public speaking, you could talk about this in any realm of any industry, is being able to be ready for that moment. Because a lot of people, a moment will come and they're not prepared for that moment, and that moment passes and they've lost that one time or that one opportunity in their life to achieve that goal of theirs because they weren't prepared. You were prepared. And it's that whole thing. Yours was a physical aspect. Some of them could be mentally something, but a lot of it you did was the physical, is the repetitions. They always say if you do something 10,000 times, you master it, it becomes almost part of your fabric. It becomes muscle memory. When all this happened, you obviously got a bigger light shined on you. Were you prepared for that?
So it started really senior year of high school, honestly. When I first committed to Tulane was when the press really started. I had some, TV appearances. I was actually flown to New York to go on Good Morning America at 17 years old. And honestly, I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't who I was. I was doing it, I wanted to play football. I wasn't interested in the attention. And, another good advice I got from a coach was if you can help and impact one other person by doing an interview, then do the interview. It's not about you. It's about what you can do for others. And so that's what I did. From then on, I did every single interview that came my way, and I still do, because you never know who will be listening or who will be watching or who will see that, and it will help them in some way. But, I think I was very nervous, when I went to Good Morning America. That was the biggest one I had done at that point. And, was on live TV in front of millions of people. And I think, looking back on it, it's funny because you can Google and watch that video. I think, oh, I was a terrible speaker back then, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, as a 17-year-old, I did a really good job, being composed, not letting, the notoriety or whatever you want to call it get in the way. And I think I was pretty relaxed, and it allowed me to really become a decent public speaker overnight, because I was put in a position to sink or swim. And, I think when most people are put in that position, they swim.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that aspect. So, and that is a huge aspect where I love the lesson you said, because you were put on a platform where you were able to send your message out that could inspire and help other people. And a lot of times that notoriety or that light shone on you, it's not a comfortable thing for a young athlete, and especially when they are actually talking about an accomplishment that you're not thinking of. You're an athlete. You're there to make the team. You're there to help the team be better, and they're focusing on you being legally blind and accomplishing this great accomplishment. And I actually watched a documentary recently with my son. So my son plays baseball. He's a lefty, and it's on Jim Abbott. You know the athlete?
Yep.
Incredible story, incredible documentary. And he did all these interviews and all that stuff. And he actually says that, and he says something very similar, where he absolutely hated all the interviews. He hated everything because they kept shining the light on his disability and not on what he had accomplished. And obviously, to went on to have an amazing career, get a no-hitter in the major leagues, which is, it's stunning. It's such an accomplishment as a pro athlete, because even if he had both full limbs, what he accomplished would have been an amazing career. So, but everybody always focused on his disability, not what he achieved. And I think there is a great lesson for individuals that are going through a situation where they might have a disability or a disadvantage, and they are great athletes and they are accomplishing something great, understanding that there's a message. And I talk to my son about this all the time. There's a message for you to be told, and your story could inspire, even if it inspires one individual in this world, you've done amazing, because you're taking that person out of a dark spot and putting them into a brighter light, saying, hey, there's hope. Even though if I'm in this situation where I was born with this situation, I could still accomplish something amazing. So I think I love that you at a young age were able to identify that, with the obviously advice of a coach, identify how much your story could impact and help others. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you for doing that. You keep going back to your coaches as giving you those advice, those things. So a lot of your coaches growing up were obviously huge impacts and mentors in your life. Is there one or two particular that you still go back to and you still talk to on a regular basis, or had such an impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I want to say that my parents, I think, were a really big part of who I became. And they never pushed me in a certain direction to play football or not, but they pushed me to succeed. As a young kid, if I was struggling to do something, they would challenge me. They would want to see me learn and grow instead of just doing it for me. And so I think that was a huge impact. And then, when I got older, like I said before, I went to school every day at like 5:30 in the morning to practice snapping.
Yeah.
And my dad would never come up to me and say, Arron, do you want to go snap tomorrow? Or on a Saturday, Arron, do you want to go snap? But if I asked him every single night before, every single Saturday, and said, Dad, can we go snapping tomorrow? Dad, can we go snap today? He would do it every single time. He was never going to push me to do it. But if I asked and was willing to put in the work, he was willing to go with me and do whatever he could to help me succeed. Going alongside that, every single morning at school, it was really 4 people, me and my father, and then a close friend of mine. His name's Austin. He was a quarterback, and now he's a quarterback at the Division I level as well. And his father, Steve. And so their entire family, Steve's father played for the Patriots. Steve played for Northwestern. I think he played in the NFL for a little as well, but he was a huge mentor to me as well. He taught me, really the what work ethic is, and how to outwork others, what you need to do to succeed. And so I think that was a really crucial role model in my life.
There's a few things I want to dive into there, Arron. One, and my story, and we've had this conversation. I greatly appreciate what you said there about your parents. And I think it's a topic where having that support from home, and having, I call it, as a father now coaching and helping entrepreneurial dads with a platform, I call it the yes factor. And I say, anytime as a father, your responsibility, if your children ask you to do something that is not something, I need you to buy me something, Dad, but I want you to spend time with me, it's the yes factor. You always say yes to that, because that time is so precious, and being able to spend the time with them. So I appreciate that you said about your father, about always being there. He never pushed you, but he was always being there. And that support is so valuable, and it's obviously a huge part of your building block, and it's going to be a huge part of you one day when you're a father. Hopefully that'll actually, it's those lessons and you understanding those lessons are going to make you a better man. So I appreciate that. And I think having,
and if I can just say one thing on that real quick, and I think that I wish I had said this when I did as well, but just going on it, even on the days if my dad couldn't take me, my mom wasn't going to catch my snaps, but if my dad couldn't, she would get up in the morning, she would drive me, and I would go snap into a net. So it wasn't just him; it was both parents doing whatever they could.
Yeah, and it's always like that. It's always a support venture, right? I mean, most parents are just support because obviously, do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a sister who's 2 years older than me, who we're very close, and then I have an older half brother.
Yeah, it's amazing too. So it's 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's having both supporting parents, and obviously my son, we talked about it. He's accomplished so much at such a young age, and it's both sides. It's my wife and myself putting the hours, putting the dedication towards seeing him achieve, and understanding that the important understanding of for us to give him all the support he needs to be able to achieve it, and teaching him that work ethic and teaching him how to push himself. And also, I'm sure your parents too subconsciously pushed you harder than you'd probably realize it when you're younger. And that's obviously built part of who you are. So once you got to your Division I school and you started playing, let's talk about the whole process of, you were there for 4 years?
Yep.
4 years, as you said, your second year, it was your sophomore year, you got your first play time, right? So
yep.
Year 3, let's dive into year 3, because obviously now you had established yourself as a position player. How was your role and how was your mindset going into that season? Because now you're obviously go.
There was a big transition between year 2 and year 3 for me. Yeah. And I don't know if we actually covered this before or not, but after I played for the first time, 2 months later, my coaching staff got fired. We'd gone 3-9 the past 2 years, and then, they were gone. So a new staff came in, and I was put in a position of, all right, this is the school that gave me an opportunity. Will this new coaching staff even let me, continue to play? What's going to happen? So the new staff came in, and, Coach Willie Fritz, who I have to say is a phenomenal person, a mentor of mine and a friend. And at the time, though, he knew about my story, but didn't know a ton about my vision, didn't know how it was going to work. He was unsure. I was unsure. And we had this conversation. It was honestly a pretty uncomfortable conversation, but one that had to be had. And eventually we got to the point and we just said, let's do spring ball. Let's see what happens. If we have to have this discussion again, we'll come in May and have this discussion again. Never heard about it again. And 2 years later, he named me one of our team captains. And I think that is honestly one of the proudest moments of my life, because he didn't know what to expect. He didn't know what I was going to be able to do. And I completely shifted and changed his mentality and every other coach's mentality to earn that.
I love the word you said there, earned. And I think that's a huge aspect of it. Nothing was given to you. You earned their respect by your work ethic and obviously the time and effort you put into helping the team accomplish. How did the team actually perform record-wise for those 2 years with the new coaching staff?
Yeah, so my junior year we went 5-7. My senior year we ended up going 5-7. It's a unfortunate story. We should have gone 6-6 and made a bowl, but they called should have been a touchdown, not a touchdown at the last second of the last game, but is what it is. After that, I think my year was a big transition of helping turn around the program. They, have been doing a lot better since. This year they went to their third straight bowl game, and
oh wow,
they're turning the program around.
That is amazing. Are you still involved with the school?
Somewhat here and there. I obviously couldn't go down this year, but I do, make it to a game most years and go talk to the team, go help out. I don't have friends really playing anymore on the team, but, for the first couple of years out, I did. And so I would always talk to them and, go and see them play.
Now your transition. So you were a free agent. You applied to be a free agent in the NFL. How did that did you go to, obviously you went to training camps. What was the whole process there?
So I did my pro day. I talked to a bunch of teams, and it was something where it was something I really wanted. I wanted to make the NFL. I thought this was the decision and the path I wanted to go. And to truth be told, I think that if I had really said I'm gonna only focus on football for the next year, I probably would have had an opportunity to make a team. Would I have started? I don't know. Would I have made a team? I don't know, but I think I would have had a decent chance. That being said, I had opportunities, in the world of finance, and I wanted to go into the world of speaking as well. And it was a pivot that was at the right time, and it was the right move for me to make. And I have no regrets for shifting my career path. And I'm very thankful that I did at the time that I did, because, I'm a lot further ahead now than I would have been if I was still trying to, or bouncing between teams, or things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the world of finance, was this something you had interest in, a passion in? What drove you to get into the world of finance? Because it's a very competitive field, but it's also a very lucrative field if you actually assess your, like you say, your clients, and you build a regular system and stuff like that. So how and what got you into the world of finance?
I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for a while, and I think that I wanted a field where I had a lot of freedom and I had the opportunity to make as much money as I wanted. And so, I'm not going to go into detail of my specific job, and if someone looks me up, they'll see it. But the thing with my specific role in finance, and you don't get this anywhere else, and I get this with both the finance side and the speaking side, and I'm so fortunate and so thankful that I have it, because most people, can only dream of having it. But I have as much freedom as I want. I have the ability to hop on a podcast with you right now. I can go out to lunch with someone today if I want to, as long as I don't have a meeting. I can do whatever I want, and I can have as much freedom as I want. I can go spend time with my sister or my girlfriend or my parents tonight if I want to, because I'm not stuck in a 9-to-5. At the same time, I can make as much money as I want. If I work my ass off for years and years and years, there's absolutely no limit on either the finance or the speaking side of the amount of money I can make. And that's really what drew me to everything I do today.
I love that. So let's dive into, Arron, into your speaking aspect. Mm-hmm. When did you put in your head that you wanted to tell your story, and what age did you realize that this is something I want to do, and when did it come to fruition? When did you were you able to start the public speaking, and how did it all start?
Yeah. So, because of doing a lot of speaking opportunities through interviews and things over the years, I, had developed a skill. I was decent at it, and it was something that I knew I could help others. And I think it was about a year out of college that, I said, I want something more in my life in addition to finance. What can it be? And I started doing speaking engagements. I started doing some. I started helping others that way. And then, probably 6 months after that, I really figured out, with the help of my friend Sam, who I recently connected you to, that I can monetize this. Not only can I help and impact other people, but I can also turn this into a business and make a lot of money doing it as well. And so he was a big mentor of mine, and still is, of really helping me turn that around into, let's help and impact as many people as possible, but let's do it at the same time of turning it into a business.
Yeah, I love that part. So you've done, how many times have you been on stage and over the last few years and all that stuff like that? How many times a year do you try to get on stage? Obviously the pandemic changed all that, but prior to the pandemic, how many times were you stepping on stage?
Before the pandemic, it wasn't as much as I would like. I wanted to grow, and I think it was a few times, but it wasn't a ton. I think the pandemic has, as bad as it has been, it's allowed me to get my name out a lot more in the speaking world through going on podcasts, my own podcast, growing my Instagram, networking with individuals. And so, my hope is that, I'm on a stage once a month, or whenever the opportunity comes, when this pandemic ends, and I can really turn it into a profitable business opportunity. I think this year has been tremendous for my growth in that field.
Yeah, I think a lot of individuals, and we have this conversation a lot with entrepreneurs, is how you come out of a situation like this is going to show how strong you are as an entrepreneur, because you have to look at the darkest moments and find a light in them. And a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself, myself, 2020 was actually, a lot of people obviously suffering, a lot of people through mental health and ill and whatnot are going through that. And I don't want to not shed a light on that, but 2020 was probably career-wise the best year of my life.
Same.
And it's because it gave me so much more opportunity, because I was doing really well with all my businesses. I was helping a lot of individuals. My 2 companies were doing well. We're building a great portfolio of real estate, but I was just working, family, family, family. And I had a routine, and I was very stuck in this routine. And it just gave me an opportunity to sit back and be like, hey, you know what? There's other things I want to do, and I've never really allocated the time to do it. Let's do it now. And that's when the
Exactly.
podcast, that's when my coaching platform, that's when I started putting a pen to paper and wrote a book and all these other things. And I think that is a great opportunity, because a lot of people, and I've talked to so many people on Arron in December, and a lot of people were having that mindset where, you know what, 2020 was a crap year. 2021, I'm going to turn it around. It's going to be the New Year's resolution. I'm going to flip that switch. And you know what? Let's be honest. That's all bullshit, because 2020, 2021, it's just one straight line. There's no difference. And a lot of people, and I was actually going to do a little video on this probably this week, is a lot of people that I've been talking to in the last couple of days, all of a sudden 2 weeks into 2021, but they had this low hope and all this. And 2 weeks later, a lot of us are still in lockdowns. A lot of us are still going through a lot of trauma, mentally, physically, and business-wise, and nothing's really changed.
And I think, you know, it's how you prepare for it, though. And the people who had a good 2020 business-wise will have a good 2021. The people who didn't
100%.
have a good one probably won't, unless they drastically change their life. You know, you and I were talking about this today before we went on air. You know, I've had some big wins already this year in 2021. I've also had some big things that might become losses, might become wins. I don't know. And at the end of the day, I hope they become wins. But if they become losses, I accept them, I understand it, and move on to the next one, because there will be more opportunities.
I think that's a great little lesson there. And you have to understand that. And any lessons or any things that do not become big wins or wins, you have to understand also that it's a lesson, and you analyze that lesson. I was having this conversation, and I actually talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I had this conversation a few months ago with my daughter, and she had done a dance competition, and she's always done extremely well. She's a high performance dancer. She's always done extremely well. She always seems to finish first somehow in all her competitions. And it was the first time she finished third place. And she came home and she was really sad and depressed. And she's like, how did I do this? And I said, Sierra, I go, you finishing third is not an issue. I go, if you not learning from this lesson is the issue. I said, you have all the film of the whole actual competition. I go, I want you the next week is to watch the video of the second place winner and study everything she did. And then watch the video of the first place winner, study everything she did. And then I said, watch the video of what you did and study it and understand it. If once you do this, now you can actually realize what it takes to get to that second, or what it took to get to that first place, and what you did wrong that you could correct. So if you could take this as a lesson, it's very valuable. And I think those are lessons we have to teach people.
Yeah, failure is good if you learn from it. And I think that, you know, the situation that we were talking about earlier, when it first came up earlier this week, I probably didn't handle it how I should have, and I probably was a mess. I was caught off guard. And then, you know, yesterday I learned from it. I had to call someone. I did what I could to fix the situation. I corrected my mistakes. I learned from the lesson. And you know what? At the end of the day, if it resolves in my favor, I'm going to be thrilled. But if it doesn't resolve in my favor, I learned lessons. I changed my behavior. I figured out what I can do next time to do better. And because of that, I'm going to be so much better off in the future.
Yeah, I love that part. Just like you said, it's just constantly learning from your lessons and adapting from them and growing from them. I think that's a huge part where people could take that and understand that. And through anybody that's going through a situation right now where it's 2 weeks into 2021, you're like, wow, this is going to be another crap year. Every single day, we all have the exact same, the most successful people in the world, and the ones struggling the most, we all have one thing in common. We all have 24 hours in a day.
Yep.
And what you make of those 24 hours and how you utilize those 24 hours are the difference from the top entrepreneurs or most successful people in any industry or even the best athletes. Is how you utilize those 24 hours. And I think a lot of people have to stop making excuses and stop playing the victim card, because I think it's very easy. We live in a society where it's very easy to play the victim card, because a lot of people get, I don't say rewarded, but they get comforted for being the victim. So you put a post on social media like, oh, this happened to me. You're getting 1,000 likes. Oh, don't worry, Jessica. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to fight through it. And then you put your accomplishment, you get 2 likes. People are like, oh, great job. So it's you have to do it for yourself, first off, and you have to understand that no one is going to do anything for you. You might get people to guide you and help you through the process if you're lucky enough. But the reality is you got to go out there and put the work in and figure out a way to pivot your business or your career that you, one, you're going to wake up happy. Second, that you are going to succeed in 2021, because reality is shit hits the fan every day. You just got to make the most of it, kind of thing, right? So with that being said, and this is something we're going to be talking about a lot after, but 2021, let's fast forward to December. Where do you want to see yourself?
I think there's a few goals. I think on the speaking side, I want to be, consistently getting more gigs. I want to have, legitimate name recognition all over. On my podcast, I want it to, grow to be one of the top podcasts there are. And, I'm in the process of working on that already. And on the finance side, I want to, explode my business. I want to, probably triple it or quadruple it. And I have a roadmap, and I think that all of those goals are attainable if I continue to follow the process and follow the steps that I've put into place and going to continue to put into place.
Yeah. There's a very, very bright future for you ahead. And like I said, you have an amazing story that's going to inspire and hopefully shift the mindset of a lot of young individuals that are going through something similar that you went through and needed that little talk or that boost or that push. And with yourself is, I love the bare fact that you are understanding at a very young age. How old are you, Arron?
24.
You're a baby still, man. I could be your dad. I'm 43. I could be your dad, for God's sake. And you're understanding that, and I want this to be a lesson to anybody listening right now, is you named 3 things there. And that's something, as at a young age, I've always had multiple streams of income or multiple streams of areas that I wanted to focus on and improve. I never put all my eggs in one basket. And I love the bare fact that you named 3 things, and there's probably going to be hopefully your book and other things that are going to be coming in. So you're going to have 4, 5, 6 different things, because spreading yourself in directions that you know that you can succeed on and directions that you are going to benefit yourself and benefit others by you doing that are important. And I think a lot of people have to understand is always having more than one stream of income is very important. Also, because pandemics hit, things shift. You went through, you said this week, something that could alter financially one aspect of your business. So having different streams of income is so important that they're always benefiting. If one's lower, the other could also be shifted or come higher. So having different streams of income, having passive income is another great way as well, which is eventually your book and other things you're doing. So those are 2 things that I think a lot of young entrepreneurs can learn from is not putting everything focused on one. I do understand the whole thing of putting your energy on one thing till it grows, but having different streams of income in different areas that you want to grow on and have different goals is very, very important for yourself.
And going on that, some of them take a lot of time up front, but they become passive income. 100%. One of my goals is to grow my podcast and monetize my podcast. And at the end of the day, I have someone who helps me with editing it because that's just not my strong suit. And, when I get to the point where it's, able to be monetized, all I do is I get on conversations like this, have a good time, talk to people, send it over to the person who helps me with editing, and then post it, and then it will make money. I mean, that's passive income.
100%. Is there any other fields that you have interest in that you can see yourself getting into over the next few years?
I don't really know. I think I love everything I'm doing, and nothing really hits the nail on the head. I think right now I'm very happy with everything I'm doing and everything I have going on. I will never get into something that is a strict 9-to-5 type of thing.
No, you're a natural entrepreneur. I can't see that ever happening.
I love doing, having the freedom that I have, and, we'll see. I love what I have, like I said, and you never know. There might be other areas to add down the road, but that's something we'll talk about as time goes on.
Yeah. There's one thing you said there. I'm gonna ask you 2 other questions, but there's one thing you said there And I appreciate that too, Arron, is at a young age, you keep saying the exact same thing. And I think that is such an important lesson for people to learn from, is you keep saying having the freedom.
Yep.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, it takes years and years and years of them being an entrepreneur before they realize that being successful is not having a Porsche in the driveway, is having the financial freedom, being able to wake up every morning and do what you love. And that allows you to do other things that you love, is having a financial freedom. And you've said that in our podcast here probably 5-6 times, the freedom and that word. And I love that aspect. I think that's something so important for a lot of entrepreneurs to understand, is wealth should be measured by your freedom.
Yeah. No, at the end of the day, think about what you do. And if something comes up with your family, with any relationships that are truly important to you, can you drop everything and go to it? Yeah, I might need to cancel a couple meetings and reschedule, but if something came up with my parents or my sister or my girlfriend, I would, I'd sign off this, I'd drop everything for the rest of the day, send out a couple texts and go, because I have the freedom and ability to do that.
Yeah, I love that. There's 2 questions I ask, and all my podcasts are very free flowing. There's 2 conversations or 2 questions I always ask all our guests at the end. One of them is a little harder for you because you're so young, but I think you've had a lot of life experience. You might be able to understand it and answer it. Is, if something were to happen to you today, Arron, in a few simple words, how would you want to be described by your loved ones and your closest relatives and your closest friends? In a few words, how would you want them to describe you?
Impactful. I think that if something were to happen to me, I want to be known as someone who left a legacy of impacting others and creating change and a difference and really making that impact.
And you're well on your way on doing that. So I appreciate that. And the next one is superpower. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
I don't know, maybe like teleportation, be able to just go anywhere in the world I wanted. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. I just had the guest I had on this morning, when I asked that question, he said, be able to freeze time and be able to
That's a good one as well.
Be able to replay certain parts of his life, replay them again, and just be able to live through them one more time, which I think that's, those are, both of them, I think are pretty cool, because you get a lot of individuals like, oh, I want to fly, or I'm like, no, you have to come up with something a little more.
You see, my thing with teleportation is it's not focused on being a superpower. It's focused on, okay, I have a coaching call with you. Let me teleport to Toronto real quick and do that. Oh, I have a meeting with Chris. Let me teleport to England. I need to talk to Sam. Let me teleport to Los Angeles. Like, it would just allow you to connect with so many people.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. It would be a pretty crazy world if we lived in a world that did that, right? But with our future technology, you never know, man. I think travel's coming, is going to, over the next 10-15 years, is going to speed up a lot with all the hyperlinks and all that. This traveling time is going to be cut really, really short over the next probably 10-15 years, I think, with our technology hitting so you might be able to travel a lot quicker, right?
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on our podcast, Arron. I appreciate our connection, and I appreciate who you are in your story, and I appreciate where you are in your career at such a young age, at 24, because a lot of individuals at 24 just focus on partying and focus on just enjoying life, and they're not realizing everything you're doing right now and all the steps and the effort and the work you're putting in right now are going to put you so far ahead of the game when you get into your 30s. And I appreciate that. And I see a huge bright future, and I'm excited to see it and help you get there. So anything you want to tell our audience before we head off today?
First off, thank you. Appreciate those words, and thank you for having me. Second, for anyone listening, feel free to connect with me. My website's arrongolub.com. My podcast is Blind Ambition, and you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Arron J. Golub, or LinkedIn, anywhere. And message me. I respond to all messages. I'm more than happy to connect.
I love that. And all our show notes, I'm going to put all the information, how to connect with Arron, and links to all his site, his social media, and all that. And hopefully we'll have him back on in the near future and see his journey and how his journey has continued. And once again, I appreciate you coming on, Arron. Thank you very much. Have a great day, buddy.
Thank you.